The following message has been authorized by Alberta Accountability Alliance, abpolica@gmail.com. Little Miss Marlaina Misspoke, A Beginner's Guide to Nazis and Fascism. In 1933, Adolf Hitler incited an insurrection against the German government. He was tried, given a slap on the wrist, and became a convicted felon. Hitler claimed the trial was political persecution and claimed he was a victim of the corrupt Social Democrats. Sound familiar? Hitler cleverly claimed himself a voice of the common man, railing against the elites and the establishment, claiming the education system was indoctrinating children to hate Germany and promised to return Germany to greatness. Sound familiar? To solidify his base, Hitler scapegoated minorities for the nation's problems, exploiting societal divisions. Hitler's Nazi Party gained traction until he became German Chancellor in 1933. Sound familiar? Hitler appointed German oligarchs as his economic advisors and proceeded to privatize government-run utilities, solidifying support of the economic elite. With the working class now divided, the Nazis shut down worker unions and abolished strikes. Corporate profits skyrocketed while the working class lived paycheck to paycheck, as progressives and union leaders were imprisoned and sent to concentration camps. Hitler, who gained extreme wealth while in office, knew that the only way to get away with their plan was to constantly have an enemy within to blame while he and the corporatocracy robbed the country blind. Sound familiar? The easiest target was one of the smallest minorities in the Jewish people. Hitler removed birthright citizenship rights and started rounding them up for mass deportation as illegal immigrants. The Nazi-controlled press propaganda machine highlighted acts of violence by the Jewish people to convince the general public that these Jewish immigrants were a danger to the real Germans. Sound familiar? Hitler wasted no time dismantling democracy. Loyalty wasn't just encouraged, it was demanded. Opponents were silenced. Media who dared to defy were labeled the enemy of the people. Sound familiar? The Nazi regime and its followers collected all books they saw as promoting degeneracy or what would be considered as woke in 2025, or those that promoted class consciousness and burned them all at mass book-burning bonfires. Sound familiar? Berlin had a thriving 2S LGBTQIA+ community in the 1920s, including the first transgender clinic that was burned to the ground by the Nazis. The alphabet mafia were forced to wear triangle badges as ID, then sent to concentration camps where many were killed in the Holocaust. The Nazis also saw manhood under threat by independent women who didn't need to rely on men. In 1934, Hitler proclaimed, "A woman's world is her husband, family, children, and house." Women's rights were repealed and new laws were introduced that restricted women to the home. Reproductive rights were rolled back with doctors that performed abortions facing charges up to the death penalty. Sound familiar? In closing, unlike in 2025, the German people didn't have a similar historic parallel to look back at as a warning. As it didn't start with the gas chambers, it was the division, intolerance, and hate speech, and when people stopped caring or just turned a blind eye, that was the beginning of the Nazi fascist regime. Although most Germans went along with their lives as usual until many of them faced the same tragic fate as the ones determined as the enemy. By the time Hitler's reign of terror was forced to an end by the Allied forces, 11 million people were murdered in the Holocaust, with an additional 70 to 85 million killed in World War II. Little Miss Marlaina Misspoke, A Beginner's Guide to Nazis and Fascism. The following message has been authorized by Alberta Accountability Alliance, abpolica@gmail.com.